Now entering is made possible with support from Frank Miller Lumber, Ward Construction, Citizens State Bank, City of Union City, with additional support from Abarote y Taqueria Los Tacos, All Brothers Lawn Squad, Bowser's Barn Restaurant and Catering, Carts and Parts, Community Foundation of Randolph County, Dennis Pratt State Farm, English and Prentke Attorneys at Law, Calp Pharmacy, Ohio Valley Gas, Paul Faddis Tartar Realty, Randolph County United, Structured Solutions.
Hello, I am Mayor Chad Spence, and you are now entering Union City.
Due east of Muncie, Union City sits right on the border between Indiana and Ohio. Technically, Union City is actually two communities, one on each side of the state line. Union City, Ohio was platted first in 1838, followed 11 years later by Union City, Indiana. Multiple railroads intersected here at the state line, and for much of the 19th and 20th centuries, the railways brought industry and entertainment to Union City. For many decades, the post office was about the only thing shared between the two sides of the state line. Until 2006, Indiana did not follow daylight saving time, making next-door neighbors an hour apart for half the year. Today, however, the relationship has grown into a strong sense of shared identity. The 5,000 people on either side of the state line tend to refer to their town simply as Union City. You'll find residents passionate about their shared community, including educational opportunities, a revitalized downtown, and a community Christmas celebration you'll have to see to believe. You are now entering Union City.
I've received a lot of compliments from folks in the community and outside the community too, in terms of the changes they're seeing. They're excited because they're seeing hope. They're seeing change. They're seeing productivity. They're seeing new. And new is a word that's not always commonplace in a small community. Vision Corner, which is what we call it now, and unfortunately it was called the Green Monster previously. That was one of the first things I saw as an opportunity for us to, if there's a way for us to fill this building and revamp it, completely rehabilitate it, bring it back to its former glory, we can infuse life hopefully into the downtown. And so it's this multi-collaborative project where we take a couple of great entities out of the school, KISS TV and Apache. And so that's just the first floor. And then the upstairs will be workforce development and training and career-focused education, post-secondary education, if you will, with Ivy Tech, where we'll be able to help meet the needs of local industry and surrounding industry at a much higher level. And then there's also esports program that's being worked on and developed in collaboration with Ball State University, which is also exciting because the kids are really amped about that. I'll be honest, I thought it was kids playing video games and that was it. It's much deeper than that, and there's a lot more that goes into it than that, and it's a great learning opportunity actually for kids. So it's a corner that's going to become a vibrant piece of the downtown and a source of life. With Workhorse, it's really cool because it goes back to our roots. I'm sitting in my office and Steve Shoemaker, who at that time was our fire chief, and he was just assisting in a city management role, had gone out there to check on something regarding his duties as fire chief, and he came back and he said, they've got some trucks out there that they built. I go, what? We thought it was an empty building. And they'd quietly been working on like some prototypes for all electric delivery vans. And I said, well, we need to find out what's going on. We need to build a relationship there. And so that spawned communication efforts with them and vice versa. How can we help facilitate growth? How can we help be a player in terms of helping you guys eliminate barriers and help find more employees for the area and help build out there what you're really seeking to build? Because let's face it, if they win, we win, and vice versa. Governor Isaac P. Gray served 2 terms as state governor for Indiana. But what's even more significant, beyond the many accolades that he achieved in his tenure with the state of Indiana and the United States, he actually played a significant role in having Monument Circle built in Indianapolis. And our last remaining attachment physically to Governor Gray is this 2-story mansion on the corner of Howard Street and Pearl Street that we sought to acquire because we had visions of restoration and it serving a purpose in the community. We have folks that come to town, they don't have anywhere to stay. And sometimes they need like mid-range housing. They're not looking to buy a house, but they don't want to stay in a hotel for 2 months. And so there's an opportunity for us to have 6 suites, maybe even 7, put into the Governor Gray Mansion, and which will help completely rehabilitate the mansion, but also make it a vibrant piece of the community again. You look at something like Vision Corner, you look at Governor Gray Mansion, and it's like, oh, it's done, served its purpose. It's no good anymore, unfortunately. That's not true. And I'd like to think that we as people think like that too, that there's always something in us, there's always value in us, and I hope that takes root in every person in this community, because that's what will make this community successful. I've been here since I was a little kid, since I was born. My wife, she was on the Indiana side, I was on the high side. We met, we went to the same church as kids and didn't realize it, and then now we're married and best friends. It's just home. I love the people, I love the memories, and I love the possibilities that still exist. And I'm thankful for Union City.
I went to a one-room schoolhouse over Greenville, and we had one teacher, and she taught all the grades. 1942, I got married and come to Union City. We lived on a little farm on the outskirts of Union City. My husband was a fence builder, and we lived there, and then we moved to town, and then we ended up living on West Division Street. I lost my husband, and I lost my only son, but now I got 2 grandsons. Blake Clevenger, he's a computer technician here, and Troy Clevenger, he lives in Michigan, and he has 3 children. But I've had a good life, and I can't complain. When I first came to Union City, I didn't know anybody. But then I got busy with other activities. I got busy with church, sewing club. I got really busy because that's what I enjoyed. Art club, and that's what I enjoyed, doing things in Union City to keep busy. And now I love Union City. I like the people. I like what they got to offer, and you will get help if you need help. One day our ministers called, another minister, and they said, we need help. So they called a meeting at the help center and asked for volunteers. So I volunteered to help. So then another woman, Doris Fields, and we got busy, And we started this organization. Roberta Hart said, we need somebody to open the doors. So I said, okay, I'll open the doors. Doris said she'd take care of the financial ends of it. One day, some truck come in with a bunch of food, and we didn't know what to do with it. This man said, I know what I'll do with it. I will build you some shelves. So he built shelves, so that started the food pantry. And I was there for 13 years. At first they said, oh, it won't amount to anything, but they were all proven wrong. So now it's a blessing to Union City to have this here. We've done a little bit of everything to make Union City a good place to live and to be prosperous. I grew up in a very poor family, and we didn't have very much. We had each other as I grew up. We loved each other. We shared everything we had. So that was the way I grew up, and I still like to do that. I still like to help people all I can. I live in assisted living in Union City. It's a welcome place. They will treat you well. We have good churches. We have good schools. We have places that you can come and live and be friends with other people. They will welcome you into the community and help you if you need help.
Hi, my name is Karen Carpenter, and I'm here today to talk about the theaters that were in Union City over the years. In the 1800s, there was an opera house on the corner of Oak Street and Howard Street, and it's the Backstay today, and now it's been changed into loft apartments. They had all kinds of big stars from the day, like W.C. Fields, and they had Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale, and they had John Sullivan, who was a bare-fisted boxer. So they had a variety of entertainers. James Whitcomb Riley performed on the stage. He wasn't the Hoosier poet then, but he did tell stories, and people enjoyed his performances. And he lived in Union City for a while and painted signs, so he had a history here also. The Pythian sisters built another opera house on Pearl Street, and after they built it, shortly thereafter, it burned. And then Charlie Caldwell rebuilt it, and he named it the Union Grand Theater. It was used for many things in the community. They did have the funeral for Isaac P. Gray. He was from Union City. He was governor of Indiana and also ambassador to Mexico. And when he died, they brought him to Indianapolis, to Lyon State, and then they brought him to Union City for the funeral because it was the only place large enough to host that large of a funeral. The Miami Theater came later. It was built in the early 1900s. It was a hardware store to start, and then someone bought it and it became a Nickelodeon. So it played the silent movies, and they had a piano player, and you could get in for a nickel. My grandfather was named Kenneth Sink, and he and his dad and brother owned 3 theaters in Greenville, Ohio. They started out there in the 1900s, and they were very progressive. They spent $9,000 on some equipment for the silent movies, and that was in 1920, which was a lot of money back then. And then my grandfather met my grandmother, and she was from Union City, so they moved to Union City. So then he bought the Miami Theater first and leased the Grand Theater for several years, and then he ended up buying it also. So after my grandfather bought the Grand Theater, he was, again, very innovative, and anytime things changed, he was, on the cutting edge, and he made history in movies because there was a new way of booking films, and he was the first one to sign on with RKO. And there was a big article in the paper, and that opened the gateway for others to do that. My grandfather passed away. He died in 1948 suddenly from a heart attack. So that led my grandmother and my dad, Benny Fuller, my grandma Mabel Sink, to run the theaters after his death. We had lots of stage shows and things, and all kinds of famous people appeared on the stage, both when my grandfather was living and then after he passed into the 50s. Count Basie came, and my grandma said, that old piano will not work, we have to have a new one, and she bought a brand new piano for him to play. And then after the theaters didn't have those stage shows, it came to my house, and I still have that piano that he played on. They also had big Nashville stars like Little Jimmy Dickens and Pee Wee King, the Shawnee River Boys. And the reason all these acts could come to the Opera House and to the Grand, we had 5 trains that came into Union City at one time. And so these performers were, on their way to Chicago or New York or somewhere, could stop by in our small town. We got to see things that we would have had to travel to the city for. The stage shows ended when they went to CinemaScope because the screen was 2.5 feet wider than anything they'd had before, and so that took up space that they would have had stage shows. You couldn't set up the band and the orchestra and stuff anymore. And the first movie they showed was The Robe, and it was a big deal. It was 3 hours long or something. They had an intermission, and it was a big thing. And people would stand in line around the corner to get tickets to go to the shows. My dad and my grandma worked all day. They worked in the office during the day, and then I remember my mom had to iron 14 shirts a week because my dad had to clean up and then come back and take tickets and things. And I got to see any movie I wanted. I didn't have to pay. Sometimes my friends didn't have to pay. My grandmother ran a tight ship, and she was very strict. She was a tall woman, and I said she would have made a good school teacher, but she insisted that everybody that worked for her learn how to, good business. And so if you were in the box office, which I did when I was in high school, you better come out even in the evening for the number of tickets you sold and the money you took in. And you had to count it all out, and you had to count back change. Popcorn machine had to be cleaned out, it had to be a certain way, and if you didn't do it right, you'd do it again. But a lot of people went through there, high school students, and said that they really learned good business tactics, and my grandma was the reason. Since we have such a history, it is important to preserve the history of the theaters and things. Personally, I would like to see a mural done of the theater or some of the people that were there to kind of show that history to people that don't have any idea that that's what went on back in the day.
Well, I would like to talk about opportunities for leadership in a small community and about the engagement that led me to working with preservation in Union City, the Preservation Society. JC's is an organization for young men. I was quickly picked up by some of the young guys in town saying, we'd like for you to join us as a member of JC's. And that led me to a greater understanding of the sense of community because all of JC's activities were geared to the city, whether it was developing the football fields as we were starting a program or putting the signs, street signs in all over town, doing promotional activities, fireworks, 4th of July, and the idea that you give back to the community that has given so much to you. In downtown Union City, the Kirschbaum building that the city had originally decided was going to be the city building. Then they gave up that idea because they felt it was going to cost too much and they were going to tear it down for 6 parking spaces. Well, it's a cornerstone building in the downtown landscape, and because we had started work through Ball State, working on the depot, it was a natural transition then to say, no, we're not going to let that happen to this building. And Preservation Society was formed, and I became one of the charter members of Preservation. And that led to the focus on downtown districts and saving old buildings. And we have proceeded to work on downtown ever since. I worked at the school system here for 34 years. And one of the things that Rick and I, the guy that worked with me on many of our projects, we wanted students to see that there is an important element of this community. It's giving you your opportunity for an education. It's your home. It's part of you. So you have to make yourself part of it. And so a lot of the projects that we did included the students in what we were doing. Almost all of the work that you see in this room and in the rest of the buildings that Preservation has worked on have been volunteers from this community, either monetarily or bricks and mortar. We had all of downtown Union City put on the historic register because when we worked with Indiana Landmarks, one of the things they remarked about was the fact that the upper floors of all of our buildings are almost intact as when they were built. And the store fronts on the first floor level, change, and that's typical. But getting it on the register was one of our major projects. Union City, the name, is the result of the fact that this town was created because of 4 major railway systems from Ohio coming into this area. Indiana, they met here and formed Union City as they formed the union of those rail systems. That's why we're called Union City, and it's also called the Hub City. Our most current project is to create a statue in a new housing development in Union City for Governor Gray. Governor Gray was the 18th and 20th governor of the state of Indiana, and nothing has ever been done to recognize he was from Union City. So that's our mission, and the city has taken it on to establish this new housing district, and it's going to be called the Governor Gray Edition. I would say that we have had a renaissance in the last 5 years, and businesses are coming back to this area. Houses that had stood idle are being seen online because of technology. We have people here from Colorado, from Las Vegas, from places in California, from Arkansas, and that's within the last 5 to 6 years. And so we're seeing that there is a rebirth going on in Union City. But that cooperation that has always been there is now making new things possible, like Vision Corner, that will be a television studio and a business operated by the high school. I'm most proud of the fact that it is a community that gives people life and opportunity. There is no other place like a place in Union City that you will end up having a street named for you and for the services that you've provided to this community that you love.
I'm Cheyenne. I'm on the Village Council, and I am also the Park Board Chair. And I've been doing that for about 5 years now. So I had moved down to Cincinnati to go to Miami Hamilton, and I had met my spouse down there and lived down there for about 4 years. We decided to have another child and decided to move back home. And home to me was the small town community, where you knew everybody and you just felt safer. Definitely where I wanted to raise a kid. Whenever I had my son, I wanted to take my 2 kids to the park, and I got there and this won't do. I can't, this is awful. This stuff was old. There was only one thing my kid could play on. So I'd called the city building and I was like, hey, do you guys need help with something? Can I help clean it up, scrub graffiti? Can I help you find some grants? What can I do? And I had the soon-to-be mayor call me, John Fields, and he said, hey, we're putting together this park board. I'm the chair on it. We don't have anyone else to sign up for it. Why don't you come to a meeting? So I did. And after a couple meetings, there was a vacant council seat. And he said, you've really got the heart for this. Why don't you try to run for council or try to get in there? And I said, no, absolutely not. He had said, just give it a shot. So I did, and that was 1 term ago, and so this is now my 2nd term. So yeah, it has been a journey, and I've loved every bit of it. I actually had used that playground when I was in preschool through 3rd grade. They would walk over to that for their recess. The equipment had been there for a long time. I had applied this year through Darke County Parks for about just a little shy of $12,000 for a grant, and I received it. And what's really cool is we've had the Union City, Indiana even offer assistance with installing it and, being a part of it. Chad Spence was a big part of writing a letter of support for me for this grant and being a big push behind it. I have worked on the little blessing boxes. It's kind of like food pantry type thing. I have done the little library. It's at the fire department, and so I painted it red because it's at the fire department and the fire engine red, and it says get fired up about reading on the side of it. I'll find books and keep it stocked. Charlotte's legacy. That's my grandmother. She used to have a little grocery store right uptown. And I can remember being a kid and people coming in hungry and, wanting, and they didn't have money or they didn't have food. My grandma would go back and get a box and, give it to them and just kind of like pay it forward. So that's why the little blessing box, that's kind of where that idea was born from. So I think a lot of my heart of service comes from that. That and my mom, they were both very selfless people. I love Union City because it's home. It's where I grew up, where I was raised. It's where I chose to bring my kids back to be raised. And just to have that community feel where everyone knows everyone and everyone looks out for everyone. That's why I love Union City.
Now entering is made possible with support from Frank Miller Lumber, Ward Construction, Citizens State Bank, City of Union City, with additional support from Abarote y Taqueria Los Tacos, All Brothers Lawn Squad, Bowser's Barn Restaurant and Catering, Carts and Parts, Community Foundation of Randolph County, Dennis Pratt State Farm, English and Prentke Attorneys at Law, Calp Pharmacy, Ohio Valley Gas, Paul Faddis Tartar Realty, Randolph County United, Structured Solutions.